welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. Y'all, we're down here in a suburb outside of Dallas, Texas to shoot top 5s Japanese maples. I'm standing here with Trista, and you're commonly known as Tree Bowden. Yes. In much of the live chats.
Yes.
Is Tree like a name that you normally go by?
Yes.
That
nickname all my life.
That is awesome. That is straight up awesome. How long have you been growing Japanese maples?
Just for the last several years. I always thought Japanese maples were the standard blood good, and then happened to be in a local garden center and saw something else, like, what is that? And immediately fell in love. And then I was like, what is that? And what is that? I had no idea that there were so many varieties of Japanese maples, and I was hooked, like, immediately. It was just love at first sight. So
that's awesome. I fell in love with Japanese maples at a young age myself, and I can just imagine running into this like later in life and being like, oh my goodness, because Japanese maples just make people go crazy.
Yeah.
Where are you gardening currently?
Arlington, Texas.
Out of Arlington, Texas.
Yes.
So that's pretty exciting too, because that's also it's a very hot place as well.
Yes, very hot.
So we're gonna get into her top 5 Japanese maples, y'all. When it comes to Japanese maples and these top 5s, it's fun because you get to meet people that you see in the live chat all the time. You get to learn a little bit about them, but then you also get to see what their top 5 Japanese maples are. And when this happens, you get to learn a little bit about something else that, maybe you've overlooked, something that they enjoy that you might enjoy as well.
Number 5.
So what do you have at your number 5?
Number 5 is Naka Kamato Weeping Treasure. And I want to give a shout out to Bruce Burton, and you know why. So
yeah, I think that you actually won his giveaway.
Yes.
When people were, doing drawings of different maples and different things, you did a painting.
Yes.
Of was it like Meikujaku?
Yes.
So and then you won the Naka Komodo Weeping. Naka Komodo Weeping is this weeping Japanese maple that is between 400 and 600 years old. Different reports say different things, but it's at a temple in Japan. It's the national treasure of Japan. It's one of the oldest Japanese maples on record, like specifically one tree that's over 400 years old. The stakes that hold it up are over 200 years old. So there's wooden stakes that are 200 years old supporting this tree, and it sits on a mountainside at a temple. And when Matt and I were in Japan, we were visiting Nakata-san in the Fukushima prefecture, and Nakata-san, who's actually going to come visit us later this year, drove us over to see Naka Komodo Weeping, and it was in perfect fall color that day. I mean, this is a tree that's got a nice, graceful weeping habit. Matt and I always joke, this is a tree that'll get 4 feet in height by 6 foot in width in 10 years, but in 400 to 600 years, it may look like that tree by that temple. So, I mean, it does take time, but Japanese maples do continue to grow long after that 10-year time span. So that is a beautiful Japanese maple. If I was doing a top 5, that particular tree may have to be in the list of like specific trees in my top 5 as well.
It's a good one. And I love it. Number 4.
So now we're coming down to your number 4 Japanese maple.
Right.
What do you have?
Beni Shishi Henge. Shichi Henge.
What do you like about that one?
I love the variegation.
Yeah.
It's every day. It surprises me. There's more variegation on this leaf, less on this leaf. There's the pink in there, which a lot of my other maples don't have. So I just love what it's doing. It's almost like butterfly, except it's got the pink in there. And I'm a big fan of variegated plants to begin with. So it's hard to choose, but Beni Shishi Henge has to be in there. So
Beni Shishi Henge is one of our first probably 50 Japanese maples that we had at Mr. Maple, probably in our first 25. Someone at a local tailgate market had it, and we purchased it. My mom fell in love with it. My mom, it was her favorite Japanese maple, and we would graft them, and we never could have enough at a garden show because my mother would sell every single 3-gallon or 1-gallon of Beni Shishi Henge we had because she loved it so much. And so we could hardly ever keep them in stock when our parents were helping us at garden shows. And oddly enough, a lot of people don't realize this, Mr. Maple, that's an ode to our dad. Our dad is one of the ones that started the nursery. But the Beni Shishi Henge leaf is actually the dot and the .com on our logo. And that's an ode to our mother because it's one of her favorite Japanese maples. Bene Shishihinga, the name means red and changeful. And it's because pink is that shade of like red.
Yeah.
And pink and orange are shades of red to the Japanese. They sort of fit in that same area. And Bene Shishihinga is constantly changing. You get the pink in the spring, you get cream in the summer, maybe some pink returns in the summer flush. And then you get some really nice shades of orange in the fall. Sometimes some reds in there as well. The variegation on it is very strong and pronounced. If you ever do get solid green spurts coming off of your Bene Shishihinga, prune that out and try to reduce the amount of fertilizer you're putting on that tree, because sometimes that can be the cause of some of those reversions. But that's an awesome tree for sure.
I like it. Number 3,
So now we're down to your number 3 Japanese maple. What do you have?
butterfly.
Nice. What do you like about that?
I love the variegation. I love that there's a lot of white in there, and so it really stands out in the shade. I love the name Butterfly. It reminds me of my late mother-in-law, whose nickname was Butterfly.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that also has sentimental meaning. But it's just a great little tree. I love its weeping arms. You know, it's just got all the great things about it. So,
Butterfly is a beautiful tree. It can brighten up the dark places in the garden. It can remind you of a loved one. It's a tree that just is consistent, and it's consistent with a blue-green interior with a white variegation. And the white can actually look white from a distance.
right.
And that's something you can't really get in many Japanese maples. You know, there are some Japanese maples that can give you some white colors, but they're not consistent.
Right.
And with Butterfly, it's consistent. And that's one of the things.
It's almost like an outline. It just really makes it pop against the green.
And for us, it's one that can handle full sun. Down here in Texas, you're gonna have to give it some shade.
Right.
But it is a fairly heat-tolerant Japanese maple down here in Texas. It performs well, it grows well, and it's very shrubby and dense. And when it's shrubby and dense, that gives you more variegation to enjoy at a smaller height. And I like planting that thing somewhere up close. You plant it somewhere where you can really enjoy the intricacies of variegation. And that's one of the plants, like the Bene Shishihinga, that's a photographer's delight to go out there and photograph, because every leaf is variegated slightly different. Especially when you start getting some of those pure white leaves that Butterfly can provide sometimes in the shade. I mean, that thing can really just lighten up a garden.
Right. And I want to add, you know, one of my favorites is Illyrian, but the variegation is so sporadic. It's, you know, you're just going to have a lot of green and then just kind of here and there variegation, which is beautiful when it happens. But I really love seeing it all over, like on Butterfly. So
Butterfly, awesome selection, coming in at number 3.
number 2,
All right, we're coming down to your number 2 Japanese maple. What do you have?
Number 2 is Shishi gashira. It's just one of those that's so wild and wacky with the curly, crinkly leaves that are just so different from everything else. One of the things I love about maples is there's so many varieties and just so many different qualities, and that one is so distinctly different from everything else. It's hard to not love that one. The curly, crinkly leaves, and it's just, you know, and it just looks like a Muppet when with its arms all gangly and crazy.
It has a unique habit about it. And the thick branching, the thicker structure just draws your attention. And it is so different. The texture it gives in the landscape is really special with that crinkled foliage.
Yeah.
I mean, it just draws you into it to wonder what is it, and then when you become aware of it, you fall in love with it. And it's typically fairly easy to grow. I've seen it grown in full sun in Columbia, South Carolina, and it may not be as hot as Texas, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And I've seen it grown in full sun down there in clay and thrive and do well in a cousin's yard who didn't know anything about gardening.
Right.
And so I know that there wasn't a lot of care that was always given to her plants. And you say that about a Japanese maple and you're like, dang. I mean, this is a tree that was introduced in the 1800s. Well, first recorded in the 17 to 1800s. Maybe it was introduced long before that. I mean, this is a classic Japanese maple. And there's Japanese maples coming out and getting introduced every day. But when you have a tree like Shishi gashira, you realize there's some classic Japanese maples out there that need to be in people's gardens.
Yeah.
Because it's beautiful, the fall color is pretty consistent, typically get some yellows and oranges out of it, and the unique texture that it provides out in the garden is just something different. I mean, there's just something different about it too that draws you into it, and then you fall in love with it.
Right.
And I think Shishi gashira is a lot of people may start out with a weeping red lace leaf or a bloodgood, like you said. That's what many people think of a Japanese maple. But then they see there's something like a Shishi gashira,
Right.
and I think that is the perfect tree to get you the Acer addiction. That's when you become hooked.
Yeah.
That's when you're like, okay, what else is there? I mean, this is starkly different than everything else. Man, how much variation can there be in Japanese maples?
Yeah, and then when you find out that there's thousands of choices, it really makes it hard to choose. But I try to stick to acquiring ones that look distinctly different from everything else I already have.
That's a great way to do it.
So that everything is different looking, and I can still say they're all Japanese maples. Yeah.
That's how I enjoy gardening. Contrast,
Yeah.
flavor, getting different flavors in your garden, using different colors, textures, habits.
Right.
I mean, that's what ties the garden together, brings it to life, and gives you something extra out in the garden. I mean, you can have the same cookie cutter landscape that everyone else has, but with Japanese maples, you can put out different flavors in the garden to go around and enjoy. And that's an awesome way to garden.
Right. And number one.
So we're down to your number one Japanese maple. The suspense is hyped up, y'all. What do you have as your number one Japanese maple?
Try not to be disappointed, because this is a standard as you get. Orangeola. I know that a lot of people will think, well, that's nothing special about that. But for me, the Orangeola was the one that I saw when I realized, wow, they don't all look like a bloodgood.
Yeah.
And my father had recently passed away, and I thought I'm going to plant one of these in memory of him because he was big into gardening. And I actually had it out in the yard last summer, and the Texas heat was so brutal. I was like, this thing's going to die if I don't move it. So I dug it up, stuck it in a pot where it kind of suffered through the summer, but it's come back to life, and it's big and beautiful and lush, and it just reminds me of my dad.
That's really touching. I mean, trees planted as memory trees is just one of those things that when you see that plant out there in the landscape, it brings back your memories of them. It brings back the moments you might have had with them, whether it's gardening or doing different things.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing way to have as a number one tree, is something that's a memory tree for somebody else.
And, he was, his favorite color was maroon, and it's got the maroon color in it, along with the orange and olive green. But one of his favorite trees was a weeping willow, and so I liked the weeping habit as well. Also reminded me.
It does have an extreme weeping habit. It's probably got one of the best heavily cascading forms of any of the red lace leaves. I know you said it's a standard, but it didn't used to be. The reason it's becoming a standard is because so many people are falling in love with that tree. And the different color changes that Orangeola provides, with the orange red, go into the maroon, go into the green, with the orange red new growth keep popping across it, the really good red fall color, oranges to reds in the fall. It has actually become our most popular red lace leaf.
Right.
I mean, that used to be Crimson Queen. That used to be Tamukiyama. And just because a tree has become popular, to me, doesn't mean that it's a bad one. Sometimes it means that it's a great one, that it's starting to replace some of the other ones that are beautiful, but not as unique and special as it is. And
one thing I love, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
one thing I love about it is I don't have to wait till fall to have that beautiful color. It's orange and maroon and olive green right now in the spring, and it stays that way through the summer. through fall, you know? So,
That's why I like it, because it keeps putting on that new growth.
yeah.
And that new growth keeps returning to the different colors.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an excellent selection at number 1. And the fact that it has a special meaning behind it too, that just adds something extra special.
Yeah.
Well, Tree, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed actually going through your top 5 with you, and really going into learning who Tree Bowden actually is, because in the live chats all around all the time, but you know, with a name like Tree, it's like, that's got to be a name that, you know, pseudonym. But no, that's what you go by.
Yep.
That's awesome. Y'all make sure that you're subscribed to us here on YouTube. We put out YouTube videos every single day. Check us out on MrMaple.com. We add new trees every single Tuesday and Thursday. You can sign up for our weekly emails there. Take care
God bless.
and have a great day.